Hello and welcome to JUMPSCARE, quick reviews of short horror games. You'll have to excuse me for not making one of these for a while, for you see, I've been captured. I play a lot of indie horror games over on my other channel. I just find it super fun to see what small teams and single developers with limited resources, yet unlimited imaginations can do. And today we're not just stepping into a well-trodden genre. We're stepping into treasured memories of a childhood home where not all is as it should be. This is Captured. Captured is a duology of games in the ever-popular Spot the Difference horror genre, both developed by single developer Puck Redflix. In both games, you find yourself in the shoes of a child or a young person who has been observing strange events in their house. Once they try to document them via camcorder, however, they find themselves in a twisted, endlessly looping version of their family home, where all doors and windows have disappeared, and where a strange voice encourages them to spot all of the strange happenings in order to move towards an uncertain goal. Does that sound familiar? Well, yeah, that's because it is. But while the Captured games do stay true to their genre, they actually do things a little bit differently than your standard Spot the Difference fare. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. These games look and feel absolutely fantastic. Spot the Difference horror games tend to rely a lot on their main locations and presenting them as unsettling, which is why you often see them taking place in empty versions of facilities that are usually bustling with life. It's all about making you feel isolated in places where you shouldn't be, and carefully scanning areas you normally wouldn't spare a second glance, also that the game can take advantage of your careful attention in order to surprise you. But this is even more true for your own home than it is for public spaces. Now, the Captured games obviously aren't the only Spot the Difference horror games to take place at home, and the first game does absolutely use a set of rooms that I recognize from other games. But they still do manage to feel more lived in and real than many other horror game homes. From toys to appliances to little knickknacks around the parents' bedroom and offices, I can actually imagine people living here in a way that I often can't. Especially in the second game, where characters you've never even really met become surprisingly well defined solely from the objects strewn around their rooms. Now, in terms of gameplay, you're probably expecting more of the same old, and you are getting that, but with a few differences. Usually, Spot the Difference horror games go the Exit 8 route of requiring you to look for a single stray anomaly that may not even be there, also that you can eventually escape after a set amount of correct loops. In Captured, however, your progress is instead defined by your ability to spot a certain amount of anomalies and categorize them correctly. Not only will every loop always have at least one anomaly to find, it's entirely possible and very common for there to be several, and if you forget one or put it in the wrong category, then sucks to be you. Back to the start. Now, you'd think reaching a goal like find 20 anomalies would be easy when there can be 3 to 4 anomalies in a room at a time, but oh no, you'd be wrong. You're not gonna find a chair that moved 3 inches while you weren't looking, or a mirror that is angled a little bit differently. Instead, you're often dealing with missing furniture, wall writings, bright lights, entire missing rooms, or even rooms that have completely transformed into bizarre locations that have no business being in a family home. Some anomalies are even downright hilariously absurd and can be an absolute delight to see for the first time. So really, the anomalies in Captured are kind of hard to miss, but they're also hard to log correctly, because the name of the game is not so much Captured as it is Distraction. Finding the anomalies may not be too hard, but the game has tons of tools to distract you from your task. Not only do you have a time limit in form of the sanity meter, you also have a constant need for batteries, since logging anomalies actually does drain your camera. So sometimes you're gonna have to make a choice. Are you sure you got every anomaly, or will you risk running the timer looking for one more? And what happens when you run out of batteries but still have to log an anomaly? Do you sweep the house for batteries, or do you give up your progress and hope a new battery pops up in the next loop? So the driving question isn't so much, did I see an anomaly, as it is, did I get everything? And while that doesn't sound like a lot, it really does make a fundamental difference in how you play. Oh, and did I mention that the games have monsters? Cause the games have monsters. On top of the anomalies, the games are inhabited by creepy monsters called entities, which are all modeled after the main character's old toys, just to scratch that mascot horror itch a bit while we're at it. And these guys especially will make your anomaly hunting hell. Each entity has its own set of rules on how to avoid them, and it's up to you to remember what those are in order to survive. Can you duck away to safety in time? Can you hide in the dark, or are you too close to a light anomaly? How do you get them to move when they're blocking a room you still need to inspect? Trust me, thanks to these guys you can lose your progress at any time, and it is brutal to make it far only to suddenly get eaten, realize you logged an anomaly wrong, or have to start over because you ran out of batteries. Still, it's all part of what makes the Captured games a fun and tense experience. But what really makes Captured great is actually the story. Yeah, story in a spot the difference game. It's a crazy concept, I know. By design, most of these types of games are virtually plotless in order to focus on testing your attention to detail and luring you into lowering your guard. But given that in Captured you do play as defined named characters, there is actually a story in here. One that lays out its first few crumbs in Captured 1 and then expands beautifully on all of it in Captured 2. As you go through the first game, where you play as 12-year-old Joshua, you'll pick up on several things. There is some kind of entity guiding you, your case is not an isolated incident, and your recordings actually do somehow make it to the real world as your only true means of communication. You are genuinely captured. It's just that no one knows by what, where, how, or why. Pretty much all of this gets followed up in Captured 2, where you play as the considerably older Emily, and you can really tell Puck had something to say with this one. I won't go into spoiler territory, but through communication with people from her old life, characters that are better defined, and some transformed rooms that offer context clues rather than just being creepy for the sake of being creepy like before, you get just about every question answered and step into a story that genuinely thematically ties into the premise of remembering what the house should be like in a surprisingly emotional way. It's to the point where I would argue that while Captured 1 is a damn good anomaly hunting game that I absolutely recommend, its main purpose is to set you up and make you appreciate all the things that the sequel does right even more. Yeah, I don't think I've made it a secret that I think these games are great, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a few things I could nitpick at. Like any game that relies on randomization, you will end up in situations where all the game's hazards just flat out gang up on you, even if normally they're very well balanced and do a great job at increasing tension. But still, sometimes the worst possible entity spawns in the worst possible room at the worst possible time, costing you a run that was otherwise going well. And in a game where losing your progress is already pretty brutal, this can be incredibly frustrating. And while the anomalies and entities are plentiful, varied, interesting, and even sometimes downright funny, they do kind of lose their luster after you've seen them for the umpteenth time, eventually turning the game into a bit of a chore. At least until you make it to a new difficulty and it starts to shake things up again. But these are really just the natural consequences of being the type of game that Captured 1 and 2 are. If you genuinely enjoy first-person spot the difference horror games, not only will you be playing some of the most fun, nicest looking and atmospheric ones of their kind, you will also be awarded with a story that may be more heartfelt than you'd expect, which is a rarity for this type of game. Captured 1 and 2 are, despite their slight hiccups, fantastic games. They may actually be the best games of that type I've played in ages. And at $7 or so per game, you truly get a bang for your buck. I couldn't recommend these games anymore if I tried. Damn good work, Puck. You better believe I'll be keeping my eye on what you do in the future. And that's it for this episode of Jump Scare. If you'd like to see me play the games I've talked about, you can check for a link in the description or click the card in the video to be taken straight to my Let's Play channel. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to be informed of more short spooks in the future. See you there, folks, and bye bye.